Hi guys, this is Dr. Aeronautics and this is the XR-2 Ravenstar panel tutorial. Today I will be showing you operation of the panel and operation of the vital systems that you need to manage. I'm currently outside the spacecraft. This is a UMMU skin, which is basically a person or an astronaut. So this is the medic skin. And as you saw earlier, I'm in front of the spacecraft. This is the XR-2 Ravenstar, and it actually has two people in it. Well, actually it has 13 in it right now. The airlock door is open, so if we go up to it, you can actually see the seats inside. You can see right through to the inside. So we can start by doing a visual tour of the spacecraft. If you look on the guy's heads-up display here, you can see what his heart rate is and his fuel, and there's this nav HUD and everything, which basically gives information about his position. I'll probably be doing this mod, but anyway, like I said, the XR-2 is a really fantastic aircraft, and it looks a lot like the SR-71, except beefed up more because it has to carry rocket fuel as well, as opposed to just ramjet fuel, which this actually carries scramjet fuels. So these are actually the scram engine outlets right here. So that's where the scram engines spit fire out. And then these are the backs of the main engines. That's the main engine left, and that's the main engine right. And I'm using the default skin. There's the moon, for the XR-2 Ravenstar, and there are a whole bunch of skins, and people have made skins. It's actually really easy to make skins. Here are some crew windows up here. There are basically three main groups of skins. The first one being the angel skin, the second one being the raven skin, and the third one, which apparently I just discovered, is the My Little Pony skin. Apparently somebody decided to include a Twilight Sparkle version of the XR-2 default with the XR-2 Ravenstar. So you can fly a spacecraft that looks like Twilight Sparkle around. Okay, so we're going to get inside now. So the way that's done in UMMU is by approaching the airlock and pressing E, and it will ingress. So we're going to go over here and hit E. And this is now the interior of the spacecraft. We're now on the ground in a stable configuration. We should be safe from pretty much everything that I said could go wrong. This is one of four panels. This is the middle panel. Here's the upper panel. Everything on this works. Everything. This works. Everything here works. This is the payload camera view and the payload panel. So if we wanted to open up the payload, and I'll describe the operation, this is actually a camera set aboard the spacecraft above it. If you want to load stuff into the cargo bay, this is where you do it. Here you can see the fuel hatch and the liquid oxygen hatch. So we're going to return to the upper panel, middle panel, and here is the massive lower panel. And I will basically explain the operation of that. You can see here's the coolant temperature and stuff like that, oxygen readouts and stuff. So I will go through all of that. So what we can do instead is, we heard about the virtual cockpit. So if I press F8, you now go into the virtual cockpit. And I actually prefer this for long duration atmospheric flight because it really feels like, and there's this thing here, this is the nose cone. It really feels like this is a scramjet aircraft, which is really cool. It's designed a lot like an aircraft. Here you can see there's enough power outlets for 48 volts here. None of these buttons work, but it still looks really cool. So this is generic, that's not a real readout. So here's the other co-pilot, and then buttons on this side, and I guess the throttles, yeah, these might be the throttles here. The fuzzy dice, if they were in here, I think they hang from up here. And this is a HUD display. But again, none of the buttons work. And if I turn all the way around, you can see here's our empty seats down here. And this is just a back panel. I assume that's where the HVAC is. And I don't know why the meshes don't sit inside. So if I hold control and press the down arrow, I now go below the pilots, and you'll see they're actually suited on a roost here. Somewhere down there, if I go over to here and look down, maybe that was in the XR, or not the XR-2, the Delta Glider original. So they're not fully roosted on it. Okay, so now we go down to here. You can see the airlock in here. So they basically sit in a door above the airlock, which is down there. And this really looks like a space-age aircraft for the passengers. It's made to look really futuristic and stuff. And then if I hold control, other arrow, now you can see a picture of all the seats in the passengers and the rear exit for the bathroom. And it's actually in the airlock. So you can, this is a camera airlock picture. So if I close the outer airlock door or the inner airlock door, you will see it, which is great. So we can monitor it. And I can sit in any one of these seats, so I can just move around. There's 3 rows and four side-by-side seats. The windows are up here, which is a pain when you're in the atmosphere, but when you're in 0G, you don't care. Right, so I think that's a bar for the pilots. I don't see a ladder, so I actually don't know how they get up there. The ladder's probably on the airlock door here. Oh yeah, and I forgot to open the cabin hatch. So I actually want to do that now instead, because that's easier. And you can see, if I go over to one of the nearby seats, you can see, look at the insulation job on this. Like, from what I can count, that's like, I count like 22 layers of insulation. That's insane. But the potentials of this craft are incredible. That's just the glass cockpit. Now we're back to the regular. Okay, so I'm going to, remember I told you on the first tutorial about the auxiliary power unit. I'm going to start that, and I'm going to open the, where is it? There it is, the cabin hatch. And you will notice the custom sounds, and you will hear the computer call-out voice, which doesn't sound like a computer, it sounds like a human, tell me the status of that. So we're going to turn on the auxiliary power unit, which makes noise of its own. There we go. Now when I hear that combined sound with the air conditioner, then I think we're in an atmosphere, I need to pay attention. So we're going to open the cabin hatch, and if we're quick about it, we can see it from the inside. So there's the double-sided cabin hatch open. This is the outside here. And we're going to run out of, we're also going to overheat, but we're also going to run out of APU fuel unless we turn it off. So we're going to do that now. Okay, so the APU is offline. I guess the computer call-out voice doesn't call it out for that particular one. But we're going to go through the panel, and we're going to start from the bottom because it's the most important. Okay, so over here is the dock release button. I can press that now, it's not going to do anything because it's basically going to tell me the ship isn't docked, so it doesn't do anything. So you press that once like that, and it will release the craft. Then I said there's turbo packs here. Turbo packs basically allow you to... There's 3 turbo packs. Turbo packs allow you to fly around as a human spacecraft. They give you fuel, and they allow you to fly around with just the right amount. Now, somewhere on here is the actual... am I thinking Delta Glider 4? We'll come back to this. I might be thinking of the Delta Glider 4, but you might need to open it up. Here we have the scramjets. The scramjet doors.
Doors are closed.
Okay, so there's the computer call-out voice. So remember what I said was the scram doors are closed, so I can't do that. There's a pitch.
APU offline.
Right. So there's a pitch gimbal here.
APU offline.
Okay, I get it. So basically what you can do here is you can gimbal the engines up or down 4 degrees. If we go outside, you can gimbal the engines up or down. And what it does is it adds a little bit of a rotational aspect to the spacecraft. So you can pitch up or pitch down because of it, but you have to be careful when you're using it. But it helps control the spacecraft. Something that the Delta Glider stock doesn't support. And you can even change the balance of the hover engines, and here's a center button, but it's very dangerous because if you offset it too much, then you get the Harrier death spin, and then you basically smack yourself into the ground. That's really dangerous. The hover engines are controlled with a single throttle. All 3 are controlled with the same value, which makes sense because there's 3 of them, but you can't see them because the doors are closed right now. And the retro engines as well. Remember what I said is you can't thrust in retrograde. So if I try and thrust and hover,
hover doors are
it's
closed.
going to tell me the hover doors are closed. So on the main engines, you can do yaw and pitch. So that's actually two dimensions. You can do 2-dimensional thrust vectoring. So that's pitch up, pitch down, yaw left, or yaw right. So you can do this, do that, you can do that or that. So those are handy movements for the spacecraft. And I'm actually proud of the interior detail from the exterior. You can see right into it, which is really awesome. This looks really cool when you're in space. Okay. So, and then we have the main engines. If we try and retrograde, it's going to tell me that the thing is closed.
Retro doors are closed.
Yeah, so there you go. And I have several systems engaged, so I'm not going to main thrust right now. If we move over here, here's the call sign card. Let's continue moving over in a left-right fashion. This is the main hover fuel efficiency. So this lists a flow in kilograms per second and the efficiency, which is rated in kilograms per kilonewton seconds. And let me see now. This one over here is the flow for the main engines, and this one over here is the flow for the hover engines. This is a backup display. There is a flow gauge up on the middle panel, I believe. And then this is the fuel efficiency for the main engines, which is basically telling you here's the optimum, and this is our current, or at least our last value before we turned our engines off. And the other thing that was pissing me off if we move over to the fuel system is, remember when I said we were in the stock Delta Glider, we can't cross-feed. Cross-feeding is when you move compatible fuel from one tank to another.
Cross-feed off.
So we have our fuel full right now. But here's another thing we can do. We have all this useless RCS fuel. We're coming into the ground, so guess what? We can dump this and get lighter and get more fuel efficient. So you hold it.
Warning, fuel dump.
And so now we're performing a fuel dump, which is very...
Warning, fuel dump.
this is the most inefficient
Warning,
piece of
fuel dump.
You have to be careful when you use it in space because it will torque.
Warning, fuel dump.
Press it once to turn it off. So now we can use the crossfeed. So if we
Crossfeed
go to RCS,
RCS.
it's now going to transfer fuel from main to RCS. And
Crossfeed main.
I find myself putting RCS fuel into
Main fuel tanks full.
because I don't use the RCS that much. I don't actually know why there's such a huge tank. Because I don't really need the RCS that much. Or at least it seems. There's a scramjet tank here. It's a huge tank, which I usually find I don't run out. And then here's the auxiliary power unit tank. There's also a readout here. Here's the readout for here, and there's yet another readout up on top here, and there's still another readout right here. So there's a readout on every single panel. So I EVA'd as Carson Beckett, by the way. He's apparently a medical officer. So these are the fuel tanks, the 4 fuel tanks. And this is the APU measured in kilograms. All of these are in kilograms, but they also have percentage readouts. The percentage readout is only visible here. Else the other one. Okay. There's also emission elapsed time. This basically activates when you take off with the spacecraft. Then there's the external supply lines, but in order for these to become active, you have to actually turn on the you have to actually open the hatches. So I'm actually going to open the fuel hatch right now.
Fuel hatch open.
And you're going to hear the...
Refueling systems online.
Okay, so if you look at the external line pressures, you've now just seen 3 things come online. And this is basically when the truck hooks up to the valve, there's some pressure, and the pressure gauge tells you that you can now insert fuel into the line. And this is in PSI, which irritates me because you can't do flow calculations because this is in kilograms. Here's an interval timer, so I can start it now, say, hey, we're just going to arbitrarily start it now, and it's going to count up with the simulation. So this is going to fluctuate if we start refueling. So
main fuel tanks full.
Okay, the main is full.
Scram fuel tanks full.
Scram is full. So what we do in this case is we crossfeed to the RCS. And what we can also do is we're a little bit low on APU, so APU is online. So now we're refueling the APU.
APU fuel tanks full.
And because we're refueling, we have an unlimited
RCS fuel tanks full.
Okay, so now what we do is now there's a gap in the main, so we fuel the main up.
Main fuel tanks full.
That is how refueling works. So if we close the hatch again, and let me go outside real quick so you can see here is the open hatch. It's a red hatch on the inside. I'm going to go ahead and close that off now.
Refueling systems offline.
It's going to go ahead and tell us that. Here is a backup lower panel attitude indicator or artificial horizon. So we went through this. So now we're over to... okay, this is what I really love. And I really love this. This is the exact ship mass in pounds and kilograms. I use this all the time in calculations for thrust and forces and everything else. I love this ship mass value. I'm constantly looking at it. So then next we have this LOX hatch. And LOX stands for liquid oxygen. So I can open that now.
LOX hatch open. LOX resupply systems online.
Okay, so the LOX is online now, which means that we can refuel the liquid oxygen. And this is the pressure, the value in PSI. And you can see over, actually, we'll just keep moving right before I explain this. But then we have, this is a backup angle of attack indicator, plus or minus 20 degrees, not very useful for re-entry. Then we have a slip, which is basically how much yaw you are relative to your motion. That basically gives you a value of the efficiency. Again, high slip and angle of attack when you're entering. Over here is the master warning system. This is an APU warning. Actually, so apparently it's an APU power-up button as well for the lower panel. I thought it was an alarm, but maybe it does that as well. So here are all the master warning lights, and if I press the test button, yeah, it is an alarm. That's what I thought.
System reset.
So if an alarm goes off and it's going boop, boop, you press
System
this
reset.
and it will basically quiet it down, but you know there's still an alarm. I don't like to reset it when there's an active threat because it makes me feel like, okay, I really, really need to buckle down. But basically it shows you problems. If I go through the list, I'm going to say bay first, and then I'm going to go down this one, and down this one. That is the cargo bay, the main engines, the retro engines, the left aileron, the nose cone, the radiator, hull temperature, liquid oxygen problem, hover engine problems, left wing failure, right aileron, retro doors. I don't know what AIRB stands for. Main fuel, dynamic pressure excess, scram fuel. That's probably for saying scram fuel low or out. Right wing failure, gear, landing gear out. Hatch failure, reaction control system out or failure. Don't know what R fuel stands for. And then the coolant temperature, and then there's also the APU warning. So that's basically the master warning system, and all of those values that I just called out are actually simulated and will fail if you don't manage them properly. Over here is our liquid oxygen tank measured in kilograms. So now we have 363.9 kilograms of liquid oxygen measured by the cyan bar here. And over here we have the oxygen readout. This is 95.95940%. A lot of times when you're in simulation it takes forever. You notice it's not decreasing. That's because we have both the hatch open and the airlock open. If we shut the airlock and the hatch, which we'll do later, you will see this value will increase. Next is the coolant temperature. This is what you have to mitigate with the auxiliary power unit to make sure that you don't overheat. If you turn on the auxiliary power unit and you have the radiator open, then the value will increase, but not too high. There are two ways to mitigate this. One, if you're on the ground or docking with an external cooling line, which is right here. I have this on. This basically tells you this. The other way is by deploying the radiator, and when that's deployed, it'll tell you here. Either one of those will cool enough, but the problem is, if you're doing atmospheric flight, you can neither have the radiator open unless you're moving slowly, or have the external cooling online, and that basically gives you problems for cooling temperatures, because if you fly through the atmosphere, you will eventually overheat. When you hit the warning, when you hit the yellow, you'll get a warning. When you hit 90 degrees, you'll get a master alarm, and then when you start to get around 100, you're going to get failures. Over down here at the bottom, this basically just says when the radiator is deployed. Over here at the bottom is basically the system status. So this basically tells the various things that are with the updates with the spacecraft. So we have our liquid oxygen hatch open. Here it is. It's blue. So we're going to go ahead and refuel the system now by pressing the LOX button and watch this value, and that value change.
LOX tanks full.
So now you can see we just fueled it up. 364, we have the maximum oxygen. We have 14 days, 1 hour and 2 minutes, 13 seconds for 14 crew members at the percentage of 20.9% volume. So we're going to close the liquid oxygen hatches.
LOX resupply systems offline.
Okay, so now we move on to the middle panel. So the first thing I'm going to go over is the multifunctional displays, which are the exact same. Here's the orbit. The only thing that's different with it is it has the noise. The screwy Trans-X, which I found out was messed up, still works here. I don't really care because I know how to use it anyway, despite it. And for the later Norsden Lantaniso videos, I'm not using Trans-X. I'm going to manually calculate everything myself. So these are basically the exact same. The only difference is they actually make noise when you interact with them. So there's also, aside from the controls here, you can also control the main and the hover engines from here. So this is the hover gauge, the main gauge. You can do thrusting either one. And we'll just continue moving across here. This is a fuel display in the different values here. This is percentages. This is a percentage readout for the main tank, the RCS, and the scram tank. Read in kilograms. These are all fuel. These are all full right now. If we got a bay tank, and I think we'll do that later as well, you will see this value will crunch, and there'll be an area here which is full of turquoise. And the turquoise is what you have as the bay tanks. This light here basically tells you that you...
APU offline.
Okay, so you can also open the radiator by pressing that button as well. That will basically tell you that your radiator is deployed. Moving across, we have the scram engines here. And then we have the slope and angle of attack. Here's an APU fuel readout. You press that button, it'll turn the APU on. So then we have the engine display, which gives you thrust in kilonewtons. So you can measure how much thrust you're giving, all the way to 100% maximum thrust for main hover and scram engine thrusts. This line here marks the most efficient use of the main fuel. If you increase too much, you're going to be wasting fuel. So this basically tells you when I take off, I go to the most efficient section. Remember, I told you we were in the atmosphere, so there's a resistance to that thrust because of the pressure. So if we were to go into Venus, this would drop and drop and drop, and it would eventually hit zero and would lose control of the engines. Or if we went into space, this would go up and up and up to 100% and would gain maximum efficiency. So next we have the very handy acceleration XYZ. This is basically your G-forces. Y is your vertical, X is your left-right, and Z is your up-down. I'm sorry, your forward-back. So when you increase your engines with the Z, when you increase your thrusting engines, the Z is what you're looking for. I basically use that value, I actually calculate that value by dividing the mass here by the maximum thrust of the engines. And these are in meters per second squared. You see 9.8 here, that's gravity, G from the Earth. So that's normal, what you're feeling on the ground, 1G. Here's the scram engine readout. This is the fuel efficiency in kilograms per kilonewton seconds, again, of the scram engines here. Lower values mean you're getting more fuel efficient, whereas higher values mean that you're dumping fuel and you're wasting it. Over here we have the fuel flow in the scramjets in kilograms per second. A lot of times I like to get the higher values here. It's not like the stock Delta glider will just max out for a long time. The range is actually demarcated here. Here's the slip gauge. This is the primary slip gauge. Okay, and now this is very important. When you fly the scramjets, this is the diffuser temperature. You have to keep this below the yellow line, which is like 7,450 Kelvin or something like that. So what I do is on a typical ascent, you will always hit the yellow line. So what I do is I ascend and keep accelerating until my engines can't take the heat anymore. They hit the yellow line. I have to shut the engines off, and I then have to come up here to the scram doors here and close them off. Or if you increase the engines, the air burning through the tank, even with the engines off, will overheat the craft and you will die. Here's a static pressure readout of the atmosphere. So right now here's 101.29. That's different from 325, I believe, because our altitude is different. We're at actually 2.6 as opposed to 2.53 meters. Believe it or not, 7 centimeters does actually make a difference. Is that really only 7 centimeters? Oh, no, it's, well, 13. Huh. Weird. Here we have a wing load gauge in, this is going to be in kilopascal, but it says it for some reason here, kilonewtons per meter squared. That's basically the same as kilopascal. It's a dynamic force load on your wings. You have to really watch this. On re-entry, what I call dropout, which happens very, very prominently with this craft. You will always get, as long as you fly properly, you will always get a interface which is detectable and a full out which is also detectable. When you full out, you have to really watch your wing load because it can increase. Here's a dynamic pressure gauge. 150 is the maximum the ship can tolerate, so that's here. And then I told you about center of gravity shifting. Hallelujah, this is beautiful. It allows you to shift the fuel around in the craft, and no matter what the situation, this craft always has enough energy to pitch up no matter how strong the winds are. And lastly is the multi-detailed display or something like that. Okay, so there's 10 of these, and each one of these has a certain thing to it, so I'm not going to explain them all, but you can see here's 3. The arrows mean you can navigate, so 4, 3, but you can also quick jump by pressing a keyboard command, like in Minecraft. So if I do 6, it'll go to a certain page, and so I press 3 again and it went back. So your coolant temperature, which is down here, mitigated, is listed up here, so you don't have to constantly keep dropping down and up again. And then this is basically the value of this here, which means 80 degrees Celsius is here and 90 degrees Celsius is there. And it'll tell you when you're starting to overheat. Out here is a temperature readout of the current exterior temperature. It does change with the atmosphere. It does change with what planet you're on, which is great. This is a hull temperature readout. Right now we're at 288 Kelvin. That's where this stands. If you go too hot, you'll hit the yellow and the red, and it's really hard until you get used to it. You're going to have to watch my re-entry tutorial because I'm a master of re-entry with this craft, and it's very important. This is Celsius, but you can change it to a better known value if you want as well. So 31.2 Celsius happens to be 88.2 Fahrenheit. And it's 59 degrees outside. We're not moving, so everything on the craft is 59. Here is Kelvin. I use Kelvin in space because the temperature drops when you can't determine what the temperature is. So this is 288 Kelvin, which I think that's what the value I said was there. Okay, so that is the bottom portion of this. So now we go over to the left portion. Here's the HUD. There's no difference from the other one except for here again is the nearest base readout, which I told you guys about. Vertical speed and altitude, which are down here for you to read. And it gives you status updates here. The nose cone is open. Other than that, everything is the exact same. Oh, that's nice. The panel locks, so I don't have to keep doing this. This is basically the autopilot button. Or rather the light. It tells you when the autopilot is on. And there's a secondary HUD, there's a territory HUD. I hate the color scheme because I can't read it. If I put it down here, you can now read it. And it's basically the exact same readout as down here, so you don't have to keep flipping down there. The systems on this craft are very redundant, so we can turn that off now. Here's all of the different things here. I've just engaged the airspeed hold. It's set to 0. So you heard that whine, and this green light means the autopilot is active. This is another... Actually, I didn't go through these yet. This is the airspeed hold autopilot, so that's engaged. I can disengage it by hitting that and re-engage it there, or I can press spacebar, which I like, and that will turn it off. So then you see there's kill rotation, prograde, retrograde, orbit plus, orbit minus, attitude hold, and descent hold. There's no hold horizon because it's redundant. There's one here, which is there it is. The attitude hold, you set pitch to 0, that's basically the same thing. And then there's elevator trim up and down, which you know. You can change the HUD brightness as well. So if I... actually, that only changes the... if you look, it only changes the... these things here. Not the background HUD, but these things here. So you can change that, and then you don't have to keep on flipping through, so I can just change the color here, which is always nice. And then if we go over to here, again, the master warning system, you can test these, and it shows you every light there is. Let's go through these first. So here's the airspeed autopilot, then there's a descent hold autopilot. There's an attitude, but you can also set angle of attack here. Here's the temperature readout. And then this is the diagnostics. There's like 5 pages of diagnostics. Everything
Warning,
works.
re-entry check failed.
There's a special thing called a re-entry check, which basically tells you, are we ready for re-entry? That way I don't have to keep on looking out here and saying, okay, is everything alright? So obviously we failed because there's multiple things open. And somewhere on here, maybe not. So there's no altitude hold, but you basically have to mitigate it with pitch and speed. So here's the secondary HUD. This is the re-entry HUD, which gives you special values here. This is the ascent HUD. This is the atmospheric HUD. Remember what I told you? There's a feet readout and a meters or kilometers readout, which is really handy. It also gives velocity in miles per hour, so you can get a speed as well. I don't have to constantly tell you 800 miles per hour and Mach velocity, so we know when we're going to break Mach 1. And we also have a position here on the Earth. This is the docking HUD, and it basically gives you the power of the reaction control systems. If I turn that on now.
Rotation. Warning, external cooling offline.
Wow, it actually went off because of that. I didn't think that would happen.
Off.
So you saw there that the engine's thrusted for a little bit. And then this is the orbit HUD, which basically gives you orbital elements. Okay, so I turn that off now. Okay, so interesting thing to note now. our external cooling is offline, and oh no, look, the coolant temperature is rising. If we go to the temperature here, you can see it's going up. We have to open the external cooling line, or else this will continue rising up into here. And well, we're on the ground safe and sound, so other than a couple explosions that might happen, we're safe because the oxygen will break, but that's okay.
Hatch open.
Okay, so we turn this on now,
External cooling online.
and now the temperature's coming back down. And it's logarithmic, which means or exponential rather, so when the temperature's 80 degrees and you open external cooling, this will go down very, very fast. Like 10 times as fast as it is now. Here's the AF control services. The voice is the computer. Oh, right, the APU is. So we just activated the auxiliary power unit.
Pitch on. Pitch off.
Yeah, so there's the pitch and stuff. Just turned it back off again. Notice you need the APU to fly in the atmosphere, which is another problem. So your flight in the atmosphere is limited to the APU fuel and to the coolant temperature. So you have to mitigate both of those. And then there's also a data HUD, which will tell you every key command on the XR-2, and it spams the screen. Watch this. Oh, hang on. I need to. I think I have to. There we go. Screen spammed. So that is everything that you can do. I don't know how. I have no idea how you can see that. It goes through the bottom of the screen. There's so many key commands. But this is the XR-2, everybody. It's one crazy ship with a whole bunch of stuff to it. Okay, so we're gonna go to the top panel now, and here's a mission elapsed timer again, and here's an interval timer. So we're gonna go down here to this one, independent, so we can stop this one and reset it.
Interval timer reset.
So you press to stop and you hold to reset.
Interval timer reset.
Again, here's the primary mission elapsed timer. It's the same as the one down here. It's just the readout up here is the primary readout. So it will automatically start when you take off, and it will keep counting until you reset it here when landed.
Mission elapsed time reset.
So it doesn't do anything because it's 0 right now. But then there's the light control here, navigation beacon and strobe, which are on right now. So I can turn those off again. Here are the scram diffuser temperatures. These are actually, unlike the stock Delta glider, these will actually tell you the temperatures inside the scramjets, various values here. Here's the landing gear. I dare not put that up. And then this gives you, this is the EVA screen. If you want someone to go outside, I can basically choose someone to go outside.
Egress successful.
And it will egress and adjust the values. So now you can see somebody is outside the craft now. This dude here, who I just said to go outside. So you can control who goes in and out. Here are the, this is the angular velocity in degrees per second. So if you're rolling, pitching, or yawing as an airplane or in space, it will tell you the velocity there, and it will tell you your acceleration. So if you're using the ailerons or the engines, it will tell you that as well, and it will tell you the torque forces on the spacecraft as well. It's organized by yaw, bank, and pitch. I'm not sure why it's bank, pitch, and yaw, because that's typically X, Y, and Z, but whatever. So here's the scram. Actually, hang on a second. Yaw is the up, down, X. Yeah, so that doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't work. So here's the scram engines. You can open those. The hover doors you can open and shut. Retro doors. Here's the radiator. let me show what I mean about the radiator. Like I said, the radiator is like a knife through air. So I'm actually opening it right now. That's the radiator. And the great thing about it is that if I look, the wind comes from this direction, and the wind will cut right through it. So it has little effect on the wind. So it's actually quite durable. So the cabin hatch is open right now. I'm going to go ahead and start closing stuff. So here's the air brake, which you can open as well. And now this will impact your speed. It's designed to. Here is the working airlock pressurization button. If I press this, it will evacuate.
Inner door is open.
But both doors are open, so it's useless. So we're going to close the doors and the nose cone, and I can show the cargo hold with this button here. Also controlled with this button here. And there's already something in there. A crew habitat module. It gives you information here and grappling data about stuff that might be in range. So this is open now. So here you can see here's another ship mass readout and the individual payload mass. If I deploy it, you press it, green means it's unselected, you press it means it's selected. If I deploy it, the ship mass will suddenly decrease and the payload mass go to 0.
Payload deployed.
So there it goes. The payload is now set. There it is on the right side, or the left. I got mixed up. That's the left side of the spacecraft. So now it tells me that there's something in range. So if I choose 1, see 2 it says no room, but it fits the 1. So if I click grapple,
Payload latched in bay.
so now it's back in, the value's higher, and there's no payload to target. But I can select this again, and it's going to say all the information. It's going to tell me exactly where it's going to deploy, which is to the left, and slightly down and forward.
Information. APU running.
So that's the status call out right there. It's saying, hey, you don't need it, but we're going to need it now because I'm going to close the inner doors. Now, if I'm quick about it, oh dear, not fast enough. There we go. You can now see the airlock door is closing around us. So that's closed now. And now you can see here's the outer door. So we're going to go ahead and close that now as well. So here come the doors right here. And that's closing. The reason it's a side door is because of the stresses involved with holding back all of the air. It's much more realistic to do it that way. So now we're actually going to close the nose cone, and you can actually see that happening from the cockpit here. I think that guy's might get smacked. Ooh boy, you're lucky. Okay, so the nose cone is now closed, and this is what the XR-2 Raven Star looks like when it's ready for flight. It has a ballistic nose. We're also going to close the cabin hatch and watch what happens when the cabin hatch closes. And I turn off external cooling.
Using onboard O2.
There now you can see our oxygen is dropping. We're sealed from the outside and the oxygen is flowing. Now 13 crew members because I egressed one, that's why we gained a day. And now you can see that going down.
Using external O2.
Open it back up and then it's going to tell me that I'm using the oxygen.
External
from the
cooling
atmosphere.
online.
Turn off. So we can actually use oxygen without opening up the craft. So that's about it. You now know all you need to know for general operation of the XR-2 on the ground. and we will go ahead and I will go ahead and explain everything you need to know when you're flying the spacecraft through the tutorial series, like I did with the there's the retro engine inside there. The same thing that I did for the Delta glider stop. So this has been Dr. Aeronautics, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.